I am Dr. Samuel Crawford, and I have a story to share. A story that has haunted the recesses of my mind since the night I first set foot in St. Agnes Hospital. You see, this story is not mine alone. It belongs to the darkness that dwells within those forsaken walls, a darkness that I encountered during my tenure as a physician there. In the heart of the city, where the ceaseless hum of life converges with the darkness that shrouds the secrets of the night, there stands a place of healing, or so they say. St. Agnes Hospital, a looming monolith of sterile white walls and flickering fluorescent lights, bears witness to countless tales of suffering and salvation. But beneath its clinical facade, a sinister undercurrent flows, a current tainted by whispers of the macabre and the unnatural. It is within these sterile corridors, where the air is laced with the scent of antiseptic and the quiet murmurs of the afflicted, that our chilling tale unfurls. A tale of a place where the boundary between the living and the dead is as thin as the thread of life itself. A tale of unspeakable horrors lurking in the shadows, waiting to ensnare the unwary. Welcome, dear viewers, to the harrowing depths of St. Agnes Hospital, a place where the walls hold secrets that refuse to stay buried, where the nights are haunted by the echoes of agonized souls, and where the line between sanity and madness blurs into a nightmarish abyss. Brace yourself, for you are about to embark on a journey into the heart of darkness, where the very essence of fear takes form, and the horrors that lie in wait are beyond comprehension. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a ghostly pallor over St. Agnes Hospital. Inside, the halls were dimly lit, and the air was heavy with the scent of antiseptic. Nurse Emily had just begun her night shift, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Amidst the sterile and hauntingly quiet corridors of St. Agnes Hospital, the clock's hands seemed to move in slow motion, as if time itself dared not rush through these cursed halls. The night was cast in an eerie twilight, and a sense of impending dread hung heavy in the air. Nurse Emily, with her heart heavy and steps hesitant, had embarked on another night shift in this accursed institution. As she made her initial rounds, Emily couldn't escape the feeling that unseen eyes were tracking her every move. Her footsteps echoed ominously, as if the very floorboards beneath her were privy to the chilling secrets concealed within these walls. Room 213, where Mrs. Thompson resided, was Emily's first stop. Mrs. Thompson, frail and withered, lay in her bed, her eyes wide and unblinking as if she had glimpsed something beyond the realm of the living. "Good evening, Mrs. Thompson." Emily greeted her patient with a strained smile. "How are you feeling tonight?" The old woman's voice quivered, her gaze shifting from Emily to the shadows that clung to the corners of the room. "They're here," she whispered, her voice laden with terror. "The shadows, they're always watching." Emily tried to offer words of comfort, but the room seemed to grow colder by the second, and her breath formed frosty plumes in the air. She hurriedly moved on to the next room, hoping to shake off the lingering unease. Dr. Simmons, on the other hand, was engrossed in his office, poring over medical records. In the dimly lit space, the only sound was the scratching of his pen on paper. But then, ever so faintly, he heard it, a distant, mournful wail, like the anguished cries of tormented souls. He glanced up, the color draining from his face, but he dismissed it as fatigue-induced hallucinations. However, the unease lingered, and he couldn't shake the notion that something malevolent lurked in the shadows of this hospital. Meanwhile, orderly Tom was taking a break in the deserted cafeteria. His hands trembled as he brought a cup of lukewarm coffee to his lips. The night outside was eerily quiet, devoid of the usual urban sounds. But then, movement outside the window caught his eye. A figure clad in a tattered hospital gown darted past the glass, its silhouette distorted and unnatural. Tom's heart leaped into his throat, and he set his coffee down, his pulse quickening. "Hey, who are you?" he called out, his voice trembling. But the figure paid him no heed, its movements fluid and unhindered, as if it were not bound by the laws of the living. With trembling hands, Tom ventured outside, into the chilling night. The shadows seemed to dance and writhe around him, their presence palpable. He turned a corner and there, under the ghostly moonlight, he saw it again. The figure standing at the edge of the courtyard, its eyes devoid of humanity. "Please, just leave," Tom implored, but the figure remained, an ominous harbinger of unspeakable horrors to come. Inside the hospital, Emily had just finished tending to Mrs. Thompson's IV when the lights overhead flickered and dimmed. Panic seized her, and she fumbled for her flashlight. In its feeble beam, the room transformed into a nightmarish tableau. The walls seemed to come alive with shadows, morphing and undulating as though they possessed a consciousness of their own. Mrs. Thompson's frail form was engulfed in darkness, her eyes wide with terror. "They're here, I tell you. They're here," she shrieked, her voice a cacophony of anguish. Emily stumbled back, her heart pounding, and fled the room. But as she navigated the dim corridor, she realized that the shadows were not confined to one room. They were everywhere, reaching out for her, closing in. In the basement, Dr. Simmons had finally succumbed to his mounting dread and was making his way upstairs. He ascended the stairs with trepidation, the oppressive atmosphere of the hospital bearing down on him. The shadows seemed to linger, casting grotesque shapes on the walls, and he couldn't help but feel that he was being watched. Emily's frantic footsteps echoed down the corridor, and Dr. Simmons turned to see her, her flashlight trembling in her hand. Her face was ashen, her eyes wide with terror. "Dr. Simmons, you have to see this! It's the shadows!" Emily gasped. Together they ventured into the dimly lit hallway. The shadows twisted and pulsated, like malevolent tendrils reaching out to ensnare them. The hospital itself seemed to groan with a sinister energy. "We need to get out of here," Dr. Simmons urged, his voice quavering. But as they turned to flee, the shadows surged forward, enveloping them in darkness. Emily and Dr. Simmons screamed in unison as they felt themselves being pulled into an abyss of terror. Outside, Tom had frantically dialed 911, his voice trembling as he recounted the bizarre events unfolding at St. Agnes Hospital. "Please, you have to send help," he pleaded. "Something's terribly wrong at the hospital." The dispatcher assured him that help was on the way, but Tom couldn't tear his gaze away from the hospital. The figure in the tattered gown had returned, standing at the entrance like a sentinel of doom, its presence undeniable. Police cars screeched to a halt, and officers rushed to join Tom. Together they cautiously entered the hospital, their flashlights piercing the darkness. The shadows had retreated, leaving behind an eerie stillness, but there was no sign of Emily or Dr. Simmons. In the aftermath of that fateful night, St. Agnes Hospital was sealed off, its ominous presence an indelible scar on the cityscape. The once prominent institution now lay abandoned, its corridors echoing only with the chilling whispers of the past. Emily and Dr. Simmons were never found. Their disappearances remained a mystery that haunted the dreams of those who had known them. The city mourned the loss of the dedicated nurse and compassionate doctor, but their absence was a stark reminder of the malevolent forces that had taken hold within those cursed walls. Tom, the orderly who had witnessed the horrors firsthand, was never the same. He left his job at the hospital and sought therapy to cope with the trauma. His nights were plagued by haunting visions of shadowy figures and ghostly whispers, a constant reminder that the terrors of St. Agnes Hospital had left an indelible mark on his soul. As for the figure in the tattered hospital gown, it became a legend in its own right, a spectral guardian of the forsaken institution. Some said it was the embodiment of the hospital's dark secrets, a restless soul doomed to wander the halls for all eternity. Others believed it was a vengeful entity, protecting the horrors that lurked within from prying eyes. In the years that followed, those brave enough to venture near the abandoned hospital claimed to hear disembodied cries in the dead of night, and the shadowy figure was said to be seen prowling the courtyard. Those who dared to enter spoke of an overwhelming sense of dread, as if the very air itself conspired to smother their courage. St. Agnes Hospital stood as a grim testament to the thin veil that separated the living from the dead, a place where the boundaries of reality and nightmare blurred. Its chilling legend served as a warning to all who dared to tread into the realm of the unknown, a place where the shadows hungered for souls and where the horrors of the past refused to be forgotten. And so, the tale of St. Agnes Hospital faded into the annals of the macabre, a story whispered in hushed tones around campfires and told to scare the bravest of souls. For in the heart of the city, where the line between the living and the dead grew thin, the hospital's malevolent legacy endured, a chilling reminder that some nightmares never truly end.